everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about flex slots and different builds of the black-white bounce deck in Standard that premiered at the Pro Tour, which is really sweet. I've already done a deck tech and sideboard guide and stuff on it, but really we're just going to be looking at the things that you kind of have to play if you're playing this archetype, and the things that you can choose to play in the slots. The things that you have to play don't have to be in. Okay, let's do it. So if you're playing black-white bounce in Standard, these cards are the cards you are pretty much bought into playing. These 56 cards in the main deck and these 9 cards in the sideboard. You put your deck together, you're at least playing this. So the question is, what cards do you play in those flex slots? If you want to check out these non-flex slots for a little bit longer, go ahead and pause the video. I don't mind. It's fine. Here, I'll even make a funny face so you can pause the video. But really, we're just going to move on to the actual flex slots. So what are you going to play in these 4 slots in the main deck and these 6 slots in the sideboard? So these are your options. You have 11 flex slots for the main deck to fit into 4 slots, and 11 in the sideboard to fit into 6 slots. So let's talk about why you'd play these cards. You can play the Duress. It's a 1-mana sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. The player discards that card. You'd be playing this against maybe slower decks that are playing a lot of non-creature spells, or even combo decks like Control, or really anything playing a ton of or Domain, or the Mirror, or anything like that. You can play up to 2 more Grimbauble. Grimbauble is a 1-mana artifact. When it enters, target creature and opponent controls get -2/-2 at all end of turn. And it's 3 mana and tap it to sacrifice this artifact to Surveil 2. So cool part about Grimbauble compared to Nowhere to Run is Grimbauble is 1 mana. And so it being 1 mana as opposed to 2 is a really big deal, even if it gets -2/-2 and not -3/-3. Also remember, we can bounce Grimbauble, play it again, all that stuff. So really you'd be wanting this if you think you're going to be playing against aggro quite a bit. You can play a Tiny Bones Joins Up. It is a 1-mana legendary enchantment. When Tiny Bones Joins Up enters, any number of target players each discard a card. Whenever a legendary creature you control enters, any number of target players each mill a card and lose 1 life. So we have some amount of legendaries in our deck, but really we'd be playing Tiny Bones Joins Up as an additional enchantment that we can return to our hand that makes our opponent discard and tear apart their hand. You'd probably just be playing it as Hopeless Nightmare number 5 if you want that, if you're playing against decks that you want to tear apart their hand. You'll be playing 2 more Nowhere to Run. Nowhere to Run's a 2-mana enchantment with Flash. When it enters, target creature and opponent controls gets -3/-3 till end of turn. Creatures your opponent control can be the target of spells or abilities as though they didn't have hexproof, and ward abilities of those creatures don't trigger. The hexproof and ward thing is kind of nice, but doesn't really matter. This is obviously better against larger creatures. Sometimes things get out of range of Grimbauble and Nowhere to Run can hit them, and that's great. We can return it to our hand with the bounce cards. Also, it has Flash, which is pretty relevant if we want to leave something up and represent some stuff. We have the 4th Temporary Lockdown. It's a 3-mana enchantment. When it enters, exile each non-land permanent when mana value 2 or less until Temporary Lockdown leaves the battlefield. Again, this is mostly for the aggro decks. It's a 3-mana board wipe against those aggro decks. But also it's a little cute because when we play that, it exiles things like Nowhere to Run and Grimbauble and Hopeless Nightmare and stuff like that. And then we can destroy our own Temporary Lockdown or answer our own Temporary Lockdown or whatever, and all that stuff returns. So things like Pick Your Poison that Gruul plays to deal Temporary Lockdown is not good against us because, yeah, they get their creatures back, but we're getting a bunch of end of the battlefield effects that kill creatures like Nowhere to Run and Grimbauble, and they're going to discard cards off Hopeless Nightmare. It's all very funny. We've been playing Beza, the Bounding Spirit, or 1 more Beza, the Bounding Spirit. It's a 4-mana 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you get 4 life. If an opponent has more life than you, create 2 1/1 bluefish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. Draw a card if an opponent has more cards on hand than you. So this is a catch-up card. The reason this card is really good, again, is for aggro. It's fine against the mid-range decks, being able to draw a card, or against decks if we just need more threats, like against Blue-Eye Control. But really, we're just like providing 3 blockers and 4 life in 1 card. We could play 2 Shielded the Apocalypse, a 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. This is an excellent blocker. It punishes decks for drawing a ton of cards, which is amazing, and really just applies a lot of pressure and is a must answer. We could be playing 1 Overlord of the Balemerc. It's a 5-mana 5/5, and when it enters or attacks, mill 4 cards. Then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. And we can pay 2 mana to have it impend for 5. Very good against decks that we are going to go really long with. I think the issue with Overlord is they're not actually playing that many creatures or planeswalkers. There's a lot of artifacts and enchantments and instant sorceries and stuff like that in our deck. So that's kind of tough. But if the game goes long, our graveyard's going to be full anyway, so that's pretty powerful. So we're going to be selecting 4 of these 11 cards to add to our main deck. And as far as the sideboard goes, we could be playing another Rest in Peace, a 2-mana enchantment. When it enters, exile all graveyards. If a card or token would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Just amazing graveyard hate. So good. We'll be playing a Lorna the Third Path in the sideboard. It's a 3-mana 2-1 with Vigilance. When Lorna the Third Path enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So that's why we're playing this card. It's just like a creature that we can bounce back to our hand, can apply pressure as an artifact and enchantment hate. And we can tap it to have you and target opponent each draw a card, which is a little bit of a desperation game. Really funny with Shieldred, though. We could play the Beza Bounty Spirit in the sideboard. We've already talked about why we'd play that, but we could play it in the sideboard rather than the main deck. We play another Cut Down. Cut Down's a 1-mana instant. Destroy target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less. Just really good against the aggro decks. We could play 4 Duress in the sideboard to deal with those control decks and domain and stuff like that if we really, really, really want to attack their hand. We could be playing a Grim Bauble in the sideboard for those aggro decks. And Tiny Bones of Pickpocket as a 2-of in the sideboard is kind of cute. It's a 1-mana 1-1 with Death Touch. Whenever Tiny Bones of Pickpocket deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. This is just genuinely really good against decks that we need card advantage in, because this black-white deck isn't great at getting that card advantage. Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket, if the game goes long, can just generate a ridiculous amount of card advantage, especially against decks that might have difficulty blocking it. But you're going to be selecting 6 of these 11 cards to put into your sideboard, 4 of these 11 cards to put into your main deck, and then you have your very own but stock version of Black-White Bounce in Standard. There you have flex slots and different builds for Black-White Bounce in Standard. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social media. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.